Good morning, everyone. This is Karma Lichty-Bombing joining you this morning. We're going to be talking about WordPress plugins and looking at 4 specific types of plugins, or 4 what I call essential functionalities that plugins provide for us in our WordPress website. Before we get started, just a couple logistic things. Below the video or the Hangout on the web page that you are now on is a little comment form or questions. If you have any comments or questions as we go through this webinar, simply fill in that form and click the send button, and I will see that on my end and will respond accordingly. All right, I think we're set to go. A little bit about myself before we get started. I've been working with WordPress for many years. Actually, I've been doing websites for much longer than I have been with WordPress. When I first started with websites, I was doing HTML and CSS. I do come from a technical, in fact, programming background, so I didn't mind learning those kinds of things. I actually kind of enjoyed it because it was compared to what I had been doing, I could see immediate results when I changed HTML and CSS versus the old way of doing things that I was doing way back when. Then I moved into Dreamweaver, used Dreamweaver for quite a few years. WordPress came out. I was not a fan initially, did not jump on the bandwagon, but as WordPress progressed, if you will, I realized this is not a bad thing at all. In fact, a very good thing. It allowed my clients to update their websites, as well as I could easily add functionality to their websites as needed as their business grew or as their needs changed. So I'm a huge fan of WordPress and have been using it now for a number of years. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started into the actual content for this morning. If there's any issues with sound, don't hesitate to comment down below and we'll address those, but I believe everything is looking good. Let me share my screen. WordPress webinars. This webinar is a continuation of last week's webinar. And last week we started the plugin discussion, and some of the different aspects that we covered were the purpose of plugins. Kind of we took a step back and defined what plugins do for us. We looked at different places where we could actually find plugins. We talked about managing plugins, so installing plugins, deleting plugins, those types of things, setting up plugins. We'll do more with actual demonstrations of setting up plugins this morning. And then we talked about what I call the essential functionalities that plugins provide for us when we're working with a WordPress website. WordPress comes with a core set of functions, which is wonderful. But one of the beauties of WordPress is we can easily add features or functions to a WordPress website via plugins. And instead of spending hours and hours and days, maybe even weeks to add that functionality, we go out there, find a piece of software, which is a plugin, put that into our WordPress website, and we're up and going. So that's the beauty of plugins. And then I did cover for each of those essential functionalities, which I believe I have 8 of those. I mentioned some recommended plugins for each functionality. This week, we're going to go a little bit deeper and we're going to focus and spend some time just on the first 4 functionalities. This is a list of the 8 functionalities that I came up with or we discussed last week. These are functionalities that I consider important for every kind of website. So whether you're a small business, whether you're doing e-commerce, whether you're a corporate environment, whether maybe you're just blogging, doing a personal blog, these functionalities I consider important for every type of website. Now there are other plugins that may be more specific to a type of website that you may or may not have, but these go for every website. So with your Antispam plugin, backup plugin to recover your data if ever needed. Forms, so visitors can fill out a form on your website if they have questions, comments, or want some feedback. An editor type plugin to build on the built-in editor inside WordPress. And then a plugin to help speed up the website. The speed of your website is becoming more and more important. Google does look at that. So if you want better search engine results, you want a fast website. So we have plugins to help with that. An SEO plugin, again, back to getting better search engine results. We will implement or integrate a SEO plugin. And then a security plugin to add another level of security over your WordPress website. This morning we're going to focus on the first 4 of these. I'm going to show you some plugins for each of the first 4 type of functionalities. Anti-spam, backup plugins, forms plugins, and social media. And inside each of these, I think I'm going to demonstrate at least 2 plugins and talk about more. And then also my goal is to focus on free options. I will mention some premium options as well that are very good that I'm familiar with. Most of them I have used. If not, I will also mention that, but they will come highly recommended from other sources. And for each of the recommended plugins, we're going to go look at how to install, how to set up that plugin, and then how to use that plugin. Again, my goal is to help take out some of the guesswork when it comes to determining what plugin should I be using for anti-spam or to add forms to my website. You can spend lots and lots of time researching plugins, playing with plugins, installing plugins and finding out, oh, it doesn't quite meet my needs. Is there one that will do better? And believe me, I've spent hours and hours with plugins. So let's focus on the first 4 functionalities this morning, and we'll start with the anti-spam plugin. An anti-spam plugin helps eliminate or at least reduce any type of spam comments that will come in onto your site, whether it's through comments added to your site or whether it's through a form that's on your site. An anti-spam plugin helps reduce that. The recommended plugins for an anti-spam type of functionality, one comes with WordPress, and so it's probably the most widely used anti-spam plugin, and that is the Antispam. It's not activated by default, but it does come with a WordPress install. So we're going to look at that. That one's the easiest, and it does an okay job actually. Another popular one, and what I would consider a good one, is the Antispam Be. We'll take a look at that. And then the WP Bruiser. WP Bruiser is geared, it does a good job of stopping spam, but it also is geared more towards stopping spam from coming in any forms that you have on your website. And if you work with WordPress any amount of time, I'm sure you've noticed that you get the potential of getting spam through your comments. And what WP Bruiser helps eliminate that. WP Bruiser is actually more than just an anti-spam. It also has some security built-in features as well. And I do have WP Bruiser on a couple of my sites. One that I used to recommend that has not been updated now for quite a while, which I would remove from my list, is what they called the GASP, Grow Map Anti-Spam plugin. At one point that was a fairly good plugin, but it seems to have lost support and any recent changes to it, so I no longer recommend that one. But these 3 will certainly give you some very viable options. I am going to jump to my little training site where I play with things and use for these kinds of purposes, and we're going to go through each of these plugins that I just mentioned to some degree. We're going to start with the I don't know how to say this, the Antispam. I have a hard time saying it however you're supposed to say it. And it's going to come with WordPress, as I mentioned. You'll simply have to activate it. And settings are minimal with this plugin. If I go to settings here, you simply go to their site and you get what they call an API key and plug that in there. And this is a freebie version for personal sites. You can use that. If you're using it for a commercial site, they recommend getting a license. I think it's $5 a month if I remember right. But you can go to to their website, which I think is akismet.com, and sign up for that. And that's all you do. You simply activate it, and it's good to go. What it will do is going to put any comments that it considers spam into a spam folder. So when you go to your comments section of your website, you'll see anything that Akismet labeled as spam will be sitting inside the spam folder. And I have a site, one of my client sites. It had thousands and thousands of spam inside here, which I've added some more security to help prevent that from building up so much. But Akismet, of those 3 plugins I recommended, actually Akismet was doing the best in stopping that, those particular spams. So that's Akismet. Let's look at Antispam Be. I'm going to go ahead and activate this. I'm not going to show you how to install these. I think I covered that last week on how to install the plugins. Do it just for a quick review. You would go to Add New, search for the plugin that you want. This search functionality is you have to type the plugin name exactly. There's not a lot of leeway in this search option for these plugins. So just FYI, so you want to know the name of your plugin at this point. And it will go find it for you. And then you simply install it with a click of a button. So I've done that already with any of these plugins I'm going to share with you this morning. I'm going to activate Antispam Be so I can show you how this works and some of the settings on it. When I activate Antispam Be, under the settings option on the dashboard is an Antispam Be where you go just have to do the settings, or if you're on the plugins page, you can also just click on, whoops, I clicked on the wrong settings, went to Akismet again. Let me go back and click on settings for Antispam Be. What I like about Antispam Be is it's fairly straightforward. It's not real complex. You just turn options on and off. Basically, the default settings are good. You can just simply activate it and you're good to go. But they do have some other options that you'll see here in case you're interested. One of the downfalls of Akismet is they actually, and this is actually not legal, I believe in Germany or in some other countries, it actually passes IP address information to third-party sites to determine if this is a spam comment. In some locations, that is actually illegal. Antispam Be does not do that. You can turn that off, and that's this one down here. Use a public anti-spam database. That will prevent, with that turned off, it will not go out and share IP addresses or third-party sites. That's my understanding of that. Anything else here? I don't believe so. As far as particular information, you do have the option to delete spam after so many days. And you can mark it as spam initially so it stays out there. You can glance at it to verify it if you ever need to, or you can have it deleted right away, whichever your preference is. You can get a spam counter on your dashboards. You can kind of see quickly how Antispam Be is doing. So this is a great option. Back to the particular client site that I just referred to a couple minutes ago, I had turned on Antispam Be, and maybe there was a setting here I could have done. I didn't have time to really research a lot, but then I started getting a bunch of emails saying spam comment found, which if I could, I would just turn that off in here. Eventually I went back just to Akismet because Akismet did a good job of catching, in that instance, those particular spams. So Antispam Be takes care of one of the pitfalls of Akismet, which is sending IP addresses to a third-party location. I'm going to go back to my plugins. And on these anti-spam type plugins, I don't really have a demonstration of it. You basically just turn them on and they become effective. And as time goes on, you see how effective or non-effective they are based on the comments coming in, whether it's catching them or not. The other one I want us to look at for anti-spam is WP Bruiser. Again, I've already installed this one. This one is more complex. As I mentioned, it has a security level built into it, which adds to the complexity of it, but it does a great job as long as you're not intimidated by the complexity of it. When I turn on WP Bruiser, it adds an entry in my dashboard called WP Bruiser. If I go to the settings for that, you have different tabs here for all kinds of different settings that you can do. Again, this works well with if you have forms on your website and preventing robots automatically filling in forms and giving you bogus information. It's kind of what these initial settings are about: minimum form submission time, etc. As I mentioned, there's a security level built into WP Bruiser. You can have it automatically notify you when when a user with admin rights signs into WP Bruiser. That's more of a security, which is another type of functionality that I cover probably next week, as far as type of plugins you can use for security, and we'll also bring up WP Bruiser for that as well. You can use this to help protect your login forms, your lost password forms, etc. Again, this is another type of security level, if you will. And it integrates with other kind of contact forms, which again, I'll be covering forms I think later this morning or in this webinar. WP Bruiser can interact with those with different types of forms to prevent spam comments or spam type of issues showing up through your forms on your website. I think there's an add-on for Contact Form 7, which is one that we cover later on. So you can add features to WP Bruiser to cover different aspects of types of forms. If you're working with membership sites, you can also prevent spammy stuff coming through their forms. This kind of builds on each other, the types of forms or login options. So a very powerful plugin, lots of features, lots of options that does add to the complexity of it all. This is a list of some of the extensions that work with WP Bruiser. I mentioned the Contact Form 7. This will prevent spammy stuff coming in from a Contact Form 7 form that's on your website. It works with most of the major forms out there, as well as some of the membership plugins also. Right, so that's WP Bruiser, and it adds another level of blocking spam comments, as well as another level of security. I'm going to go back to my plugins. Yeah, there's a comment out there asking me about WP Bruiser and using it. Yes, and in these anti-spam plugins, you can have more than one of these. In fact, on most of my sites and client sites, I have more than one of these activated. I will usually activate Akismet on the site, and if I notice something's getting through, I might add Antispam Be, or usually I will add WP Bruiser as another level of security there. So you can use these in combination with one another. I'm intrigued by WP Bruiser. I haven't spent as much time at WP Bruiser as I'd like. I usually just use the default settings, but in the more recent research that I've done, my guess is WP Bruiser might be able to handle everything. I just need to do a little more research and make sure the settings are set up properly. And from what I can tell, WP Bruiser the developer does great job of support and answering any questions. So I might dig into that a bit more and eventually just use WP Bruiser. Yeah, and I'm not sure, there's a question about is there a premium version of WP Bruiser? I'm not sure offhand if there is, and I don't remember. I've been looking at too many different plugins this past week, so I forget that detail, but that's a good question. Actually, I do believe when you start bringing in some of the add-ons, I think that's where the premium option might start, where you can purchase some of the add-ons that integrate with WP Bruiser. Okay, let me turn this off because I don't want to get all my plugins activated on this site and they start conflicting with each other. I'm going to turn WP Bruiser off or deactivate. And now let's go back to just a quick comparison of the three that I've talked about: Akismet, Antispam Be, and WP Bruiser. They all stop spam. Some do better than others, and my experience has been also that in certain scenarios, one of these will perform better than other scenarios. It may be dependent on where the spam is coming from. On a client site, I had Akismet actually do better than Antispam Be. But again, I didn't spend a lot of time researching and checking my options or parameters on those to say for sure that one is better than the other. But just be aware that they all do a pretty good job of stopping spam. And my most recent research, I think, indicates that WP Bruiser might do the best in that category. Send info to a third party, which can become an issue in certain locations. Akismet does do that. That's one of its major pitfalls. Antispam Be, it's optional. WP Bruiser does not do that. And also in my research most recently, WP Bruiser is a very fast anti-spam plugin, so it's not slowing down your site. And for those instances where it did slow down sites, the developer for WP Bruiser was quick to respond and help that individual change settings to make it fast and not slow down their site. Akismet, as I mentioned, comes with WordPress already. Antispam Be, what I like about that, it's fairly easy to set up. You can pretty much go with the out-of-the-box settings. And WP Bruiser is much more than just anti-spam. It also has another level of security options. Let's move into the next functionality. We covered anti-spam. Now we're going to cover backup options. Of course, this is the way you back up your site. So in case anything happens, you can always restore your site. I'm a huge fan of the first plugin I recommend there, WrapUp. I use the freebie versions. The premium version will add options, I believe, as far as storing your backup at different locations. Some locations do come with the free version. If you need additional locations, the premium version makes that available, as well as some other additional features, which I don't remember offhand what those are. Another one that comes recommended, I'm not as familiar with this one, I did play with it a little bit recently, is Updraft Plus. It also has a free version and premium versions. We'll look at that a little bit this morning. I'm going to mention two premium versions that I have not used, but in any research I do as far as recommended backup plugins for WordPress, these two seem to always be listed. So I'm going to throw those out there so you are aware of them. That's Backup Buddy and VaultPress. And again, those do very well, but they are more subscription and premium based. I'm going to cover the two free ones, WPUp and Updraft Plus, and also mention why I still prefer WPUp over Updraft Plus. Excuse me one moment. All right, let's take a look at these plugins. Excuse me. I think I have WPUp. It's installed. I'm going to activate that. Again, I use this on all of my sites and all my clients' sites. I'm a huge fan of this plugin. When I activate that plugin, I get a backup option on my website, on my dashboard, I should say. Dun, 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 somewhere. Did I activate the right one? Yep. Do a refresh. There we go. If I click on that option, it's going to take me to the dashboard. And the first thing you need to do with the WPUp is to create a job. And I'm just going to create a quick job to do a full backup of this website. And it's always important on any type of backup that you're backing up not only your WordPress database, but also all your website files, WordPress files, and maybe even additional website files, depending on your scenario. There are plugins out there that will do just the database. And maybe there's plugins also just do the files. I'm not sure on that, but I know there's plugins that will just do the database. But you want a plugin that will do both, or if you do have a plugin that only does the database, make sure you add another plugin that will do the entire site. WPUp will do both. I'm going to add a new job. We'll call this Site and Database. Note backset both. Here's the option to do both. Database backup and file backup are both checked. Another thing I like about this option is instead of backing up all the plugins, which just takes up extra disk space, all the plugins are available out there. One of the options for this backup plugin is only to back up a list of the plugins. If I have that list, I can always go out there and install each of the plugins. You may or may not prefer that. I tend to prefer that because I can find the plugins if I ever need to restore. But at least I have a list of what I need to do. Another feature of this plugin is it will check your database tables and will report any issues that it finds with your database. You can name your backup file. You can specify a type of archive. Zip's a good one. Tarji zip will compress it even more. And this is where you can specify where do you want your backup stored. Now these all come with the free version. You go to a folder on your server. You can get the backup sent to you via email, which might be okay if it's a small site and your backup file is not too big. You can back up via FTP, back up to your Dropbox or an S3 service, and there's some other options here as well. So you do have options with even the free version of where you want to store your backup. Option to send you an email if there's any issues with a backup, and this is a checkbox that turns that on. Otherwise, it will send you an email for every backup. Now there's other tabs here. These are the general settings. This is one of the features I love about this plugin is a schedule. So I can back it up once a week, every day, once a month, whatever is needed. And I can turn this option on to start job with WordPress, a WordPress cron job, and I can set when I want this backup to happen. I can set the day of the week or which day of the month. I can also set the time. If I move on through the rest of these tabs, the DB backup, I can specify which tables to include, and I tend to include all my tables that are in the database, but you can be more specific if you'd like to be. And then it gives you the option to go through all of your WordPress files via the folders and determine which of these do you want to back up, and you can eliminate some of these if you would like. In the plugins tab, you simply give, in this case, since I'm only getting a list of the plugins, you can specify what you want that text file to be called. Okay, so lots of options, lots of nice features with this free version of Back WPUp. Then once you create a job, let me go ahead and save this. Once you create a job, when I go to the jobs option for this plugin, it's going to be listed here. And I can do a run now if I need to and test it out, and that simply will kick off the backup. And it doesn't take real long. Even on some of my larger sites, it's not too bad as far as backing everything up. On some of the larger sites that have a lot of media content, so there's some audio files and there's lots of images, I actually back up the images and audio files separately. So I'm not backing up everything over and over because those audio files and images tend not to change. So I might take inside the WP content folder, inside the uploads, if you're familiar with how WordPress does its folder structure, each year and each month it creates a new folder for any media that's uploaded. So I may take the year 2015 with those 12-month folders and back that up one time or maybe a couple times just to have actually back it up and maybe put a copy in several places. But I don't need to have to back that up every day or every week from then on, because 2015 won't change anymore. So, and I used this plugin to do that as well, because I can just be very specific and say only back up this folder, and then I save that out there and keep it out there, and then I don't back it up on my regular backup schedule after that. So lots of just nice features of Back WPUp plugin. Let's take a look at another plugin. I believe I have this already installed. Let me turn this one off. And that was the other one that I mentioned, was Updraft Plus. It's actually very similar to Back WPUp. The only thing it doesn't have that Back WPUp has is the option to set the time of a backup. Let me see if I can find this really quick. Updraft Plus. This one puts an entry underneath settings. I didn't show you this on the previous plugin, but you can also go back and see the logs. You can also go back and see the files. You can also specify how many backups you want to keep. So I think on most of my client site, I keep the last 3 backups. That might be a monthly backup on the more static sites. And this one works very similar. Do a manual, or you can do so many hours, daily, weekly. So you can set the timing of the backup as far as scheduling it out, but you can't set the actual time, if that makes sense. I can do a weekly backup, but I don't have the option to say what time of that week do I want to do it. It might give me, it doesn't give me an option to specify the days as far as I know. But you have the option here to specify what you want to include in your backup. I cannot get down to the detail like I do with the other plugins as far as which folders to back up in the uploads. Maybe you can type it in here, that I'm not sure of. I didn't spend enough time looking at this. But you also have the option of putting it in on remote locations as well. And it has some additional add-ons that you can add via the premium options. So a very good backup. Not quite as many options that I could tell compared to Back WPF, but it's also a very good plugin. All right, let's see how we're doing with time. We're on 8:30 already. I'm going to go through 2 more types of functionality if we have time. Let's go to the plugins. Yeah, I just got a comment here. They use Updraft Plus and they're really pleased with it. So that's great. It is a very good plugin. A lot of this sometimes, Updraft Plus is actually a newer entry into the backup plugins availability, but they certainly do look very, very promising. Did I turn that one off? Nope. Okay, let me jump back to our slides really quick. So just a quick review. I'm not going to go over the 2 premium versions. You're welcome to do that if you'd like to explore those, or just do more research online about those. Just a quick review of those 2 plugins that we just covered. Back WPF, you can store to cloud, or via FTP, you can have it emailed to you. If it's not too big, you can put on a folder on your server. The thing to be aware of, if you put on a folder on your server, if you lose connection to your server, you lost connection to your backup. So it's probably a better idea to at least store it somewhere else as well. And you can easily restore in both of these. And I've done that at least with Back WPF a couple of times. Back WPF includes a database check. You can also drill down and be very selective on what you want to back up. Updraft Plus, very similar. You can store to offsite or third-party sites with the free version. You can also quickly restore. The little bugaboo that I have with Updraft Plus is that I cannot schedule time of day for a backup. I can do that if I purchase and get the premium version. Let's move into forms, and we may not get to the last functionality because forms, I think I want to show you 3 different forms, 3 different plugins for forms that I do recommend. Contact Form 7 is the plugin form that has been out there forever. It's a very good plugin. Probably the one downfall with Contact Form 7, it is getting better with this issue, but it's a little techy. It's not quite as easy to implement if you're not used to some techy type of formatting and setting up. Caldera form comes highly recommended. Of these forms, that's probably the newest. It's not the newest one as far as how long it's been out there, but to me, it's probably the newest one. But in the research I've done recently, that's the Caldera form is often recommended. WPForms is probably the newest one into the plugins for forms, and it's developed by WP Beginner, so it's a very good plugin. I'm a fan of WP Beginner. It has a free version plus a premium version. And then there's Gravity Forms, which also comes highly recommended. I have used Gravity Forms on a client site. Very, very powerful. There's not a free version of Gravity Forms. It is a premium plugin, but its functionality is out to wazoo. Let's take a look at these plugins. We'll start with Contact Form 7, which I have already installed and activated. Here's my contact form. I just want to kind of introduce you to what it looks like. So this is kind of how it looks like. It's become better in its interface to make it easier to add fields to your form. So if you want to capture an email address, just simply click on email. It will give you the option to enter the necessary information, make it required, what you want to call it, then just simply click insert tag, and it placed it right there. Now what it doesn't do for you is put formatting around that. So you notice these other fields have formatting around it where it's identifying what to enter. So you have to plug that in yourself with contact form. But usually this here is a given form. It comes with contact form. It's a simple contact form that you can easily add to your contact page. And what I would usually do if I want to add another field, I'll add that field, and then I'll kind of copy and paste the formatting around it. So the way this form looks, if I go to the page on this training site, is this right here. That's the form. Ignore this down here for now. I was experimenting, and we'll do some more experimenting here shortly. But it's a simple form, fairly straightforward as far as the visitor's perspective on it. A little bit techy kind of behind the scenes to get that to work, but it's not too bad. The other options you need to be aware of when setting up a contact form is once the form is filled out, where do you want the information to go? It will send it to an email address as you specify, and then plug in the information that the form that the visitor put into the form to send it to your email address. Messages is what the visitor sees after they click submit on the form. So hopefully they will always see this message. Thank you for your message. It has been sent. And you can change it to say something else. If you'll, for example, for those that have used the form on this webinar page, I think that one below this video says something about thank you for submitting. I will address your question or comment in the webinar shortly or something like that. So it's a little more personalized than just a generic message. But you have the option to change any of these messages. And you have messages for if they try to upload a file and didn't work, or they didn't enter a required field, you can change that here. Additional settings is usually for if you want to do some kind of formatting on your contact form. And there is, I think it might be an add-on plugin to Contact Form 7, which makes it easier to design your forms. If it's not a plugin, then it's a tutorial I saw as far as adding CSS, but I think there might be a plugin that does that. So that's Contact Form 7. Let's look at Caldera Forms. I'm going to activate that plugin. And let's see where that goes, Caldera Forms. This is more of a drag and drop plugin. I'm click on New Form. It does come with some basic forms. You have a starter contact form, you have a pricing form, you have a registration form with additional participants, or just a blank form. To show you the ease of this, I'm going to do a blank form, and we'll call this test form. And we'll see if I remember how to do this. You click on that option. I'm going to drag this add a field down here. There we go. You add a field, and you can specify what type of field will it be. So we'll do just a single line of text. And we're going to call this first name. We'll make it required. And we'll leave the rest as is. And we're going to add one more field. Whoops. To an email address. We'll leave the settings as is. Actually, let's do a label here. Email address. And I think that might be it. So just to kind of show you the different options, different types of fields you can easily add as I click through here. So all kinds of options there. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Continuing setting up this form, where do I want to be emailed to? It's going to pick up your default WordPress admin address. You can change that if necessary. I'm going to leave the settings as is there. And let's do a preview form to see what that looks like. Oops. I'm going to save that form. Let me get rid of this. There we go, it's save form. Now to use this, go back to forms. I'm going to click on get the shortcode for that. I'm going to my contact page, which is right here. I'm going to add the shortcode for that form. Click update. Go back to my contact page, which I believe is right here. I still have my contact form 7 at the top here, but then here's the Caldera form. So fairly easy to set up. Fairly straightforward in doing that. Let me check one other thing here about Caldera forms. Yep. Yeah, there's some settings you can do for all your forms. I'm going to leave those all as is. I'm going to go back here one more and just check this form. I forgot to add this little submit button, so put that on that one really quick and call it submit. Save form. Now if I go refresh this, should have my submit button now in my Caldera form, however you say that. There's my submit. Okay, so a little more, maybe a little more intuitive than the contact form 7. And as you notice, I'm not as familiar with this plugin as I am with some other ones, but even if you just kind of stumble around and click on some buttons, you'll figure it out. So not too bad. Let me look at the other plugin that I wanted to introduce to you, and that's the WPForms. This is a more recent, probably it's probably been out for at least a year now, if not more, by WP Beginner. And I just want to introduce that real quickly to you. WPForms. Let's add a new form. This actually kind of creates a whole new interface here, if you will. We're going to call this Pest Form 2. In the real world, you would give it a more definitive name. And just for ease, I'm going to create a simple contact form. So it does come with some templates, if you will. The premium version comes with other types of templates. So that's its basic contact form for WPForms. And you can quickly add other types of options here. Let's say, I don't know, if I want them to if I want to add another field here for some reason, I can simply bring that in there. If I want to edit that, we'll call this, I don't know, maybe I want them your favorite color. And you can change, it defaults to a certain size. You can change the field settings under the advanced options if need be. And there we go. Let's click Save. Under Settings, I believe is where you go to, specify your email on where you want this form information sent. The marketing and payment options are available in the premium version of this plugin. I'm going to close this. So there's my test form 2. I'm going to grab the short code for that. Whoops, I grabbed too much there. Go to my contact page. And let's get rid of this. Add that short code, update the contact page. Again, my contact form 7 is still there, so we'll see that when we go check out this page on the website. But there's your WP form. Okay. So I think WP form is maybe just slightly more straightforward than Caldera. However, Caldera does come with a lot of features in its free version, so it certainly has its strong points. All right, I'm not going to cover Gravity Forms. That's a premium version. Again, just a quick review. Contact Form 7 is very popular. You can actually add extensions to store data. On some of my clients' site, they actually want to capture the information when a visitor puts it into a form. So we put into a database or a spreadsheet, if you will. It goes into a database. We can export it out as a spreadsheet so they can take a look at that. The Caldera form, I think that's misspelling there. Drag and drop, which is a great feature. And this includes conditional logic. I didn't show this to you, but you can do things like if they choose this option in this dropdown, then have them input this field. So you can do conditional logic, which is very powerful and is great for a free plugin. It's great that they have that option built into a free plugin. You can also store the entries. So instead of having to do an extension, you can store the entries in a Caldera form, and that's all comes with the free version. WP Forms Lite, again, it's a drag and drop feature and very easy to use. It also can do conditional logic, but not on the free version. You have to pay and get the premium version to do the conditional logic. Plus, there's other features. So that's probably one of the strong points for Caldera form is the conditional logic on its free version. That does make it stand out from some of the other options. Gravity Forms has all the above, plus more. It's a very, very powerful plugin. I'm going to, since we're getting closer to, actually, let me go through this. So this will be a quick discussion. The social media plugins, and I discussed last week what's needed as far as social media plugins, and there's two types of social media plugins. There's one aspect of social media is that you want others to be easily to share your content. So whether it's your blog post or just your web pages, you want them to, if your visitor likes it and they think of their friend that could really use this information, you want them to be able to just simply click a button and send that information to their friend. Or if they think their social network on Facebook would benefit from this information, you want to make that page or that post easily shareable on those other social networks for your visitors. So that's one aspect of social media, to easily share your content, as well as your visitors be able to quickly follow you on your social media networks, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Google+, Pinterest, etc. So there's kind of like two sides to social media plugins, and some plugins will do all the above. Some plugins do one or the other. Sumo Me Share, if you haven't heard of that, it's become very, very popular. Sumo Share will actually do both of these. I believe they have a follow option as well. And it's a free plugin up to a degree. It has a lot of additional features on their premium version, and you'll be aware of that quickly when you install their free version, because you click on an option, they say not available in the free version. But it's very popular and does a great job. Sumo Me Share. There's a lot more to Sumo Me. It's great for opt-in forms, but there's one aspect of Sumo Me Share as far as social media, and that lets them, your visitors, lets you easily add shareable buttons on your content. Shareaholic is one that I use on a lot of my sites. It will do both of these aspects. This second aspect where it lets others follow you, it does require an extra step to make an account on Shareaholic and to turn that on. Another free plugin that I use to have visitors easily find my social media accounts and follow me on social media is a social media widget. I probably don't I used to use it a lot more. A lot of times this functionality comes built in with themes anymore, so it adds the social media icons to the header for you or to the footer. So you really don't need a plugin, or the need for a plugin is becoming less and less because it's becoming more common to be built into the themes. But in years past, I would use the social media widget a lot. That would allow me to add my social media icons either to a sidebar or to the footer area. And then the other one I mentioned here is Monarch. Monarch is a premium theme by Elegant Themes. And the way Elegant Themes work is you have an annual subscription, so I think it's like $80 a year, and you get access to all their themes and all their plugins. It's a great deal. And their theme and their plugins are good. Written well, developed well, they're fast, highly recommended. Let me see if I can show you a couple of these really quick before we approach the 9 o'clock time frame. Go to plugins. Let me turn off this last plugin that we were playing with, WPForms. Yes, let's start with Tsunami. Tsunami is kind of different. It doesn't put an entry over here. Well, actually it does right down here. But it also puts this bar over on this side, so it kind of integrates with WordPress differently than some of the other plugins. Here's the share option. There's other opt-in forms that you can create with Tsunami. They're also free to a degree. And with Tsunami, you simply decide which of these you want. So you drag them from over here to over there. And it will probably ask you your information as far as your actual Twitter account, Facebook account. So you can also specify where you want these share buttons to show up. Defaults to a floating left-hand side. Inline share, I believe, is a premium option. Yeah, you have to subscribe to get that. You can also specify what pages to put it on or not put it on. So there's a lot of nice features built into Sumo, the Sumo share option, if you want to go that route. The Shareaholic option, I believe I have Shareaholic installed in here, yes. Here's your share buttons, which allows others to easily share your post or pages to others. You can specify where you want it, and you can customize that. Different looks, if you will. Specify if you want it below or above content or on the side of it. You specify if it's vertical or horizontal. If you want the normal size or smaller. If you want to include counters or not. So quite a few options here. This is where you add your social networks or you delete your social networks. So this here is what you're going to see on the thing. And you can turn this sharing and carrying message off. You can turn that, turn that off. By default, I believe it's there. Yeah, you can also turn off your counters if you want to do that via this option here. So lots of options built into Shareaholic, and I use this one the most on my own sites as well as the client site. So that's how you can share your content. The other side of social media is for them to sign up or to follow you on your networks. Shareaholic provides follow buttons to do that if it's not built into your theme. All right, I think I have covered a bunch of information this morning and a little bit longer than I like to. Quick review, and actually I wasn't sure how to do this review on social media plugins because they all do a fairly good job, and it's not really a complex necessarily functionality. So I just marked that Shareaholic is my preference, but the other ones do well also. All right, so quick wrap up for today's webinar. We covered the first 4 essential functionalities, the anti-spam, plugins, backup plugins, forms plugin, and social media plugin. And gave you a demo of those different recommended plugins inside each of those essential functionality. Next week, I guess not next week, the first week in September, we're going to cover the other four what I call essential functionalities. We're going to cover plugins that help increase the use of the editor, make it easier to use. We'll look at plugins that help speed up our websites. We'll look at plugins to add SEO options to our pages and posts, and then we'll also look at plugins to add a security level. If you're wanting more WordPress information, I have a free guide out there. It's 40+ pages. It actually takes you step by step in setting up your WordPress site, which includes a fairly lengthy section on plugins. You can find that on my site, onwardstudios.com/WP guide. If you have any questions or comments about WordPress, or you want to follow me on my social network, this is where you can find me. Email is karma@onwardstudios.com. Site is onwardstudios.com. On Twitter, it's onward. My name is Onward Studios without the A, and it's also true on Facebook, Onward Studios without the A in Onward. I also have a YouTube channel with lots of videos out there called Onward Studios, completely spelled out. All right, that wraps it up. Again, I apologize for keeping you a little bit longer than I usually do, but thank you for your comments, your questions, for your participation, for just showing up. I do these webinars every Friday, at least every Friday except for the 5th Friday. First 2 Fridays are dedicated to WordPress, and the 3rd and 4th Fridays are dedicated to Photoshop. If you're interested in Photoshop, visit onwardstudios.com or watch my newsletters if you're getting that, and you can sign up for the Photoshop webinars if you're interested. All right, don't see anything else coming in as far as comments or questions. Again, thank you all for joining. I appreciate you taking time out of, I know we all have busy schedules, but appreciate you taking an hour on Friday mornings to join us on these. Have a great weekend, and I will see some of you next Friday. Otherwise, I'll see you the first Friday in September. Enjoy your weekend.